I'm learning French, so these are some of the things that I'm doing to improve my listening skills that I know worked because I was stuck at the same level for so long. And when I started doing these things, my level went up immediately. I started understanding more and became much more interesting to learn very quickly just because it was like taking a deep dive into the language rather than staying at this memorization phase of a beginner. So here I am sharing things that I would do if I were you and I wanted to go deeper into the language. These tools work, okay? And they're easily accessible. You can do them on your own time. You don't need a teacher to help you with this specific part of the learning process. The first tip is this: focus on the forest and not the trees. You may have heard this before, but it's so essential because this happens even with more advanced English learners, language learners, is that you're listening to a conversation and then you start to focus on that one word that you didn't understand. And then you focus on it so much that you don't hear the rest of what they're saying, so you get lost in the conversation. So what you're doing is you're focusing on the tree and not the forest, the context, right? So stop trying to understand every word. That's not necessary. I mean, as you advance, you will understand more and more, but when you're in those conversations where you get lost, try to step back and look at listen to the context of the conversation. And instead of focusing on one word that you don't understand, focus on the big picture. And when you hear one unknown word, you can, instead of getting stuck or zooming in on it or missing out on everything else that comes, you can, and then you fall behind and the speaker keeps going. So you want to do this instead, okay? Train yourself to focus on context clues, these words, these phrases that are giving you the context. Listen for key ideas. Sometimes you don't even know what they're talking about, but you know they're talking about this specific area, right? And so at least you can become a little bit more involved in the conversation, right? And pick up on the tone and the intention of what they're saying. Ask yourself, what is this about? Is this an opinion? Is this a story? Is this a problem? Don't break the message into pieces. Let it come together naturally. When you understand the context, you can also ask a colleague or a classmate or a friend or whoever you're with, are they talking about this or did they just say this? So you can at least follow the conversation. After listening, ask yourself, what did I get instead of what did I miss? Okay, the second tip for improving your listening skills is listening and reading at the same time. Most learners don't get enough repetition. And so if you want real progress, I would work through the audio several times. I find an article, a short article, something interesting, something that I find interesting, whatever the topic, and I make sure that it has the audio and that it has the audio and the text. So I listen and read together, then I listen and read again, and then I make sure that I am checking all the words that I don't know in the dictionary. And then I go back and I listen and read again. And once I've done that, I will just read it. And then finally, I will just listen to it. So usually by the end of that process, I understand the whole article. And this is the key part. is that in this process, you're training your ear to listen in a different way. You're associating the auditory with the visual. So the word you saw, you're associating it with the sound of that word. Okay? You are learning vocabulary in the process, and you are subconsciously telling your brain that you understand English or whatever language you're learning much better. You're going to notice, wow, I didn't understand 40% when I started, and now I understand 100%. And then you choose another topic, another article. Okay? Powerful, powerful exercise. Do it. Okay, and why does this work? Because there's repetition, but it's not like boring repetition. It's repetition through a process. You're noticing patterns. Okay, so this is really important, the patterns. When you're doing the reading and listening, something interesting happens. Instead of, so people think, oh, I'm cheating. No, you're not cheating. You're actually working double. Your two senses, auditory and visual, are working. So you're working double, but something magical happens. You start to notice other details. It's like you're more immersed in the language and you start to notice the patterns in the sentence. You start to notice the little words that are so important, the articles, and you start, and prepositions and conjunctions and all those little words, how they come together. You start to notice, yeah, words that are repeated a lot. And then you go, well, this word's repeated a lot. This is a useful word. I'm going to learn this word and use it a lot. So you grab those words that you see that people use a lot and you start to use them yourself. So you're noticing patterns, and I think, oh, that's so important. The other thing is you're building the connections, okay? So another step you can do in that process, of course, is, the repetition. So you're doing the shadowing methodology, and then you're pausing and repeating. So you're working on your pronunciation, again, repetition, again, so many things are coming together in this very simple process. The thing is doing it. If you do it, you get better. Essentially, what you're doing is the first time you're trying to figure things out, then you start to pick up on the patterns, and then things start to fall into place. Okay, so this is kind of the process in this second tip methodology. Other English teachers have talked about it. It works. Subconscious learning is so important because with the repetition through this process, you start, the sounds start to sink in. They become very familiar. And so it immediately affects your pronunciation and also the rhythm. You're listening to this rhythm over and over again. So you're not forcing your learning, you're absorbing it over this process. You're absorbing the rhythm, you're absorbing the sounds. And you can do it with articles that are interesting. So you're also learning whatever is in the article, the content of the article. So for English, by the way, one of the tools that I love to use is Engoo Daily News. If you haven't used it, their articles are short. I mean, a lot of people use BBC and things like that. There's so much information online that you can use. I like to use Engoo Daily News because they're short, 1 to 2 minutes. They have the audio, they have vocabulary, they're good for conversation, they're always being updated. So that's a great tool that I use when I'm teaching. I often tell students to find good podcasts that they enjoy learning from. One thing that I love are podcasts with interviews where you have the transcription and but you also have two people talking with each other. So you notice the different styles of the people, right? So one person uses these words a lot, and this person uses these words a lot. You notice how they speak. Oh, I like how this person speaks better than this person. So you notice styles. So interviews are great to watch. I recommend them. That's all for today. See you in the next video. Don't forget to read and be kind. Bye for now.